Are you ready for playoff hockey or what? MoneyPuck.com has the Montreal Canadiens in the high 70s percentage-wise to make the NHL playoffs. Welcome to a brand new week. There he is from RG Media. And, of course, you see him weekly on the Shaun Starr Show on YouTube.com. It's Marco D'Amico. Marco is in the building Saturday night for that Montreal Canadiens third period comeback. Once again, the ninth time this team has come back in the third period to take over a game. And by and large, it really was a team collective. But Lane Hutson, the magic man, you know, the no shortcut approach, the constant work, the constant no days off attitude and approach to fine-tuning his skills, Marco, results in a goal that drew people out of their seats. The ovation with Ronald Lavoie after the game. Lane Hutson, lock him in, D'Amico. He's your rookie of the year, minus 1,000. What took so long for people to come around on Lane Hutson as your rookie of the year? What do you think it was that took people long enough to get to the spot where you and I have been for a minute?
I'd say mainly just because of the competition around him. It's unfortunate or fortunate, depending on what side of the spectrum you're on as a Canadiens fan, that Dustin Wolf's season has kind of teetered off towards the end. He's kind of hit a wall because at one point he was like close to a 920 save percentage as a rookie at a time where the average save percentage is 900, if not below. So like just from a regulatory perspective, that's an insane season. So just, it's unfortunate now, but I think, unless you're a Philadelphia Flyers fan looking to measure, Matvei Michkov's points per 60 against the defenseman, there's no other verifiable statistic at this point that would put anybody ahead of Lane Hutson and what he's doing. It's historic. And I think whenever anything can be deemed as historic league-wide, and that hasn't been done in decades, well, at that point, I think, it's basically a lock. And he hit those historic marks and started, going up in the history books on, anybody who wants to do a little bit of research on this can see, is offensively, he is lights out. And, it's unfortunate that we can't compare apples to apples in this case with guys like Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes because they had their seasons shortened by COVID. So you can't really, obviously they probably would have had the same production that Lane Hutson has, the 65, 70 point range. But the fact that he's doing it whilst not playing on a top tier team like Makar was at the time with the Colorado Avalanche, or not having an Elias Pettersson and JT Miller on your team like Quinn Hughes did, it's a different kind of setting for me, right? Because it almost looks like he's leading that team right after Nick Suzuki. So to me, it's very interesting. It's been very interesting to watch. But I think we can all definitely agree that the moment you start doing things that are historic, it's done. And Matvei Michkov, fantastic talent, going to be, well above a point per game for the foreseeable future. The Flyers have a really good one. Same thing with Macklin Celebrini, elite number one center in the making, just needs some actual help on that poor roster. But again, what a class of rookies this year. And so the only people that benefit from this are hockey fans in general. And,
Agreed.
Hutson, I believe, is the lock. I think we're all voting for Hutson at this point. But what's interesting to me is that the Canadiens may very realistically have two Calder trophy contenders back-to-back years. So Correct. It may not be the first time that they hear about this. But to me, it's a non-issue, and it has been a non-issue since the Four Nations return. Lane Hutson is by far the best rookie in the NHL, and I would argue a top 5 offensive defenseman already in this league.
Well said. Since Four Nations, he's been like a plus 16 point a game player. And I love what you said about leadership. You see it, man. And I think you nailed it. Nick Suzuki, Lane Hutson. So, this fan base has been jonesing for a guy like Lane Hutson, arguably their entire lives. I had on my live show on Sunday morning, I had a guy who said he's 68 years old. He has never seen a player like Lane Hutson before. Okay, that's just one fan's perspective who at that age has seen a lot of pretty good players on a lot of Stanley Cups in this city.
You know what? I'll lay you up with another one. I once spoke to Scotty Bowman, who first saw Lane Hutson play at the age of 13.
Tell me more.
And he told us, that guy, I have never seen a player move like him.
Oh
He's
my
going to
gosh.
be elite.
Oh
And
my
this
gosh, Marco.
was 2
Who's this
years
guy?
ago.
Who is this guy?
Who's Scotty Bowman? I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
You
Who's
tell
Scotty
me.
Bowman? Yeah, exactly.
But
Who are these 16 teams that didn't even want to interview Lane Hutson in his draft year when he was chosen 62nd overall? But
listen,
anyways, too
look,
bad, so
we
sad.
could all play this game. The Canadians skipped on Hutson 3 times themselves.
That's fair.
One of them was still to select, Slavkovsky.
Yeah.
But obviously,
Well, yeah.
Philip Meshar, Owen Beck,
Correct.
and then some. But everybody makes mistakes at the draft. Good Lord, we have a long list of mistakes the Canadians have made on the draft floor.
How dare you bring that up? How dare you bring that up?
But I feel like Canadians fans will agree that, in looking at this, every team needs this kind of luck on the draft floor. At one point in their rebuild in order to really get above. You look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, they got lucky this way with Kucherov in the second round, very similarly drafted around the same time as Lane Hutson. The same rank, not time.
Yeah.
9 years apart. And then you look at the same thing with Braden Point, I believe a third round pick. So you got to win. You got to hit home runs in those mid round picks on top of nailing your first round picks. To really kind of get forward. And this is a huge win for the Montreal Canadiens rebuild because, we talk about his offense. And I feel like the thing with Lane Hutson is not a lot of people are talking about the defense. A lot of people are looking at plus minuses to determine defense. Here's what I know. When Lane Hutson is on the ice, the Canadiens control by a good margin, especially of late, the amount of chances for versus against on the ice. Like, it's an actual problem to me watching games where Lane Hutson and Caden Gooley are playing together on the top pair. Right. Not because they're not excellent. It's in fact because you're putting the 2 best defensemen together, and then the other bottom 2 pairings are chaos. And so they're not really spreading the wealth around right now.
No.
And it makes for some pretty nerve-wracking, especially, situations for fans. We saw a little bit of it against Philadelphia, where sometimes Mike Matheson and Alex Carrier get a little bit overwhelmed, and then David Savard can't really follow, and Jaden Strubl's doing his best to cover for him. Sometimes it's just so watching Hutson play defensively, I think to me has been the most surprising. I think a lot of people are going to put the points. A lot of people are going to be like, "Oh my God, look at crazy goal he scored," or "Look at how well he moves the puck on the power play." I'm not a connoisseur, but I watched BC games or BU games. Oh my God, I'm gonna get shot. I'm gonna watch I watched Terrier games, and I the way he would dance with the puck was great, and you just love that electricity. But I think what became the most apparent was how quickly he would be able to pick up on timing, on gap control, on stick positioning, on footwork, on being able to pin guys to the boards, using his lower center of gravity to pin guys.
He's so good at leverage, eh? He's so good.
That ability to learn, that ability to pick up is what's allowed his defensive game to go from, being so-so in the defensive zone to being well above average already as a rookie. So again, to me, this all trends towards bona fide number 1 defenseman and absolute Calder lock.
Okay, so number 1 defenseman's going to get paid. He's going to get paid, as he should, right? Like, everything you had said. The only thing I would add to Lane Hutson, the work ethic and the no shortcut approach. The guy's willing to put the reps in order to get to a spot where he believes he should be at. And listening to Caden Gooley talk about his observations of the conversations between head coach and Lane Hutson blows him away. So in the couple of minutes we have here, what does the contract for Lane Hutson look like to you? Everyone talks about, is he the Canadiens' answer to Quinn Hughes? Is he their version of Cale Makar? Is he the superstar of the future of the Montreal Canadiens that is starting to show superstar tendencies? What does a Lane Hutson contract extension look like to you should it begin this summer? Walk me through the comps.
Well, they could sign him this summer, but it wouldn't kick in until
Correct.
2026, 2027. My
Yeah.
comparison, and has always been my comparison for Lane Hutson, is Adam Fox. Adam Fox signed an 8-year, $9.5 million deal. Charlie McAvoy signed a very similar deal, but this is when the cap was flat.
Right.
But they signed him around the same. Fox right out of his entry-level contract. McAvoy, I believe, signed a bridge. I would have to double-check that. I apologize, fans, for not knowing the Bruins contract list right off the top of my head. But I know I'm straight to jail. And then, Quinn Hughes was a different story because I believe he signed a 6-year deal at 7.8 million. So to me, you're looking at these kind of comparables. Jake Sanderson is a guy that was signed early and is now, I believe, in the 50-point range, 55-point range after last night. So, that's another comparable for me. That's a steal of a contract for the Ottawa Senators. So I think Lane can realistically ask for 10 million. I would be very curious to see if he decides to take a team-friendly contract. His agent, Shaun Coffey, is also the agent for Jacob Fowler. And it's always a little interesting because the Mr. Coffey works for Cortex, which is Kent Hughes' old agency. And it's always very interesting to me how those negotiations work. But I don't think Kent Hughes has signed a contract outside of Jake Allen that I found was an overpay.
Right.
Some people may be, how do I put this? A little less enthused about Slafkovsky's deal just because, you maybe haven't seen the growth that you were expecting this year, although he is on pace to break his point pace from last year. That I believe will sort itself out in the next year or two. So I don't think that many fans need to be worried. I think 10 million over 8 years is more than worth it. And it depends what his cap wants to do. If they want to play out that final year of his contract to see if they can go and get something higher, or if they cash in now and he signs a deal that puts him in this situation. And I think.
But what about the evolving cap, though? What about that evolving salary cap? What about the other side of the coin of maybe he wants 4-year deals? As the cap goes up, Let's renegotiate as opposed to an 8-year deal. Let me go 4 years and let's circle back because the salary cap from when I signed to when the contract ends should be in a different space. Is that
that's the importance of culture, in my honest opinion.
Got you.
That is the importance of drafting guys who want to be here. And I think that's the biggest thing. So there were a couple of fans that were a little on edge because Jacob Fowler hadn't signed at the same time as Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard. And I was saying, having spoken to the guy, in love, grew up as a fan of the team. Everybody saw his helmet after he signed where he has the Coldplay lyrics to the intro of Fix You. So it was never in doubt. And I got to say, it was the same thing with Lane Hutson. The respect that he had for the city of Montreal, for the organization, right off the bat, first of all, is the team that gave him a shot, but also because he absolutely fell in love with the fans. And I don't think this needs to be understated in any way. When he was drafted, there was a massive, massive ovation in the Bell Center when he was drafted. People were legitimately cheering as if the Canadiens had just won a game, or he had just scored a goal. And he told me that was the most humbling experience of his life, and it made him fall in love with Montreal that much further. And his goal, and this was 2 years ago, his goal was to score a goal in that building and give him a reason to cheer. But he didn't want to score a goal in the regular season. He wanted it to be in the playoffs, where that roof would legitimately get unglued. And so that's the kind of character you're dealing with. This is a guy who is locked in. Fans are locked in right now for this playoff run. Lane Hutson is locked in on this team. And I think that's why I believe it's going to be a formality again when it comes to, long-term signing. 4 years, I don't know. Obviously, 4 years brings him to his last year of restricted free agency, so he wouldn't become a free agent right off the bat and could negotiate a bigger deal. So I wouldn't necessarily see that as a bad thing for the Canadiens, because the salary cap is going to go up by such a wide margin that other teams aren't going to be able to necessarily keep up. But when you got a guy like Lane Hutson, it's just how much?
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I would be shocked if anyone did. Marco, thanks as always for another great week. We'll catch up again real soon.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you, Shaun.